So the question is then, if that's what matters, can we predict those students who will make it through successfully and on time while they're on a college campus? Well, here's what we know. Small changes in readiness make a really big difference. So take two types of students. White and African American males with a 21 on the ACT and a B+ average. Is that working? Oh, okay. A 21 on the ACT and a B+ average. This is a national probability calculator that estimates the probability of students graduating after 4 years, 5 years, and 6 years. So what you see here is the blue bars are the white students' probability, white male students' probability of graduating from college within 6 years is about 50-50. The red bars are the probability of African American male students with the exact same academic profile graduating with a college degree within 6 years. You can see the gap, what we would consider to be then the white-black achievement gap at colleges and universities in this country. But take the exact same type of student with an 18 on the ACT and a B- average. So we're talking about a relatively small change, going from an average ACT score to slightly below average ACT score, and going from a B+ average to a B- average. And look what happens to the probabilities. Now the probability of getting a 4-year degree drops from 23% to 10% for white students and from 19% to 8%. The 6-year probability drops from 52% to 30% and 47% to 26%. So going from a B+ to a B- average and a 21 to an 18 on the ACT changes your probability of success by over 20%. And in fact, what this I would call is the readiness gap. The readiness gap of success between students leaving with that 21 B+ or that 18 B- is 4 times larger than the racial achievement gaps. So while I will not say that racial achievement gaps aren't something we should always be working toward, we should always be trying to close racial achievement gaps, in this particular instance, the greatest area of concern needs to be this readiness gap. We need to increase the level of readiness that kids have when they leave high school. That needs to be our primary goal. And the question then becomes, can we do that? Can we predict a kid who's going to graduate ready for success? And the answer is yes. We can predict it in many ways. One of the ways we can predict it is with attendance data. So here you see two different types of students. A student who graduates on track for college readiness, a 21 or higher on the ACT, ready to go to college, don't have to take remedial coursework, right? And a student who doesn't. In 8th grade, the on-track student missed 9 or fewer days. The off-track student missed 11.5 days. By 9th grade, the on-track student's attendance dropped to 7 absences. The off-track student's absences climbed to 12. And by 10th grade, the off-track student has missed 14 days, and the on-track student has only missed 8. While these differences may seem practically small, it's only 4 days, statistically they are quite significant. Being in school those extra, 6 days. Being in school those extra 6 days or 5 days increases the probability of you graduating ready for success by 10%, just being in school. And in fact, we can even follow students' academic achievements from the end of middle school all the way through high school and know where they are on course for graduation. So across the bottom here, this is the grade level that the students were in: 8th grade, 1st quarter, 8th grade, 2nd quarter, 8th grade, 3rd quarter, and 8th grade, 4th quarter, all the way across. The green line represents the GPA each 45 days of students who graduate on track for success. The yellow line indicates those students who have a profile that makes it about 50-50 probability that they'll graduate on track for success. And the red line means maybe 10 to 15% of the time the student's going to graduate on track for success. So while these are distinct profiles, the gaps are relatively small. The difference between a 2.5 and a 3.1. The difference here between in 11th grade, the beginning of 11th grade, the off-track students have risen up to a 3.0, But unfortunately, the on-track students have risen up to a 3.5. So we can predict every 45 days the likelihood of a student graduating on track for success. So if we know that some kids start on track for success and other kids don't, what else can we know? For example, after the first 45 days of high school, using only the first grading period's GPA, we know that students who graduate or finish that first 45 days with a B+ average, that 3.5 or higher grade point average, 9 out of 10 times will graduate ready for success in college. 9 out of 10 times. Students with less than a 3.5, 41% of the time will graduate. In fact, if we look at it this way, finishing with a 3.5 after the first 45 days of high school makes you more than twice as likely to graduate 4 years later ready for success. So if those first 45 days are so important, is there a way that we can predict who's going to be successful in those first 45 days? And the answer is yes, we can. All these kids take a math test at the end of 8th grade for the state of Ohio. The students who score at the advanced or accelerated levels on that math test, so that's above minimal proficiency expectations, are 3 times as likely to go on and be successful the following year. In fact, 80 to 90% of all the kids who finished those first 45 days on track had that advanced or accelerated math score when they left 8th grade. So we know who these kids are before they ever get to the high school. Well, goodness, if finishing with an advanced or accelerated 8th grade math score is so important, is there a way that we can find out how that's going to happen? And the answer, again, is yes. Because students who finished 3rd grade reading exceeding minimum performance expectations 90% of the time went on to exceed those math expectations at the end of 8th grade. 90% of the time. The students who just barely met the proficiency standards or didn't quite meet them, only 10% of the time. And so then we have to ask ourselves, well, my goodness, is there a way that we could predict how some kids would exceed those 3rd grade reading standards? And again, the answer is yes. Because as Darren alluded to, in the first 30 days of kindergarten in every public school in the state of Ohio, some adult sits down with a kiddo and asks them some questions and takes them through some exercises called the Kindergarten Readiness Assessment in Literacy. And we know that when a student starts kindergarten with a score of 19 or higher on that assessment, they are on track for success. How on track for success? 93% of the students who started with who had an advanced or accelerated score in 3rd grade reading had started with a crawl score of 19 or higher. Only 64% of the students who had started with less than a 19 finished through that 3rd grade reading gate. This isn't one school. This is 1,800 students across every suburban school district in Summit County. And then the real question becomes, well, goodness, why is it that some students begin ready to learn and other students don't? Well, sadly, I can tell you that I can predict with a relative degree of certainty the average level of readiness of kindergartners just by knowing the median household income of the school districts in their community. And in fact, median household income alone, just knowing the wealth of a community, explains about 27% of the variance in those district readiness scores. So the solution seems quite obvious to me. We can increase everybody's median income by 30% in the lowest half of the state. Right? Or we can dedicate all of our efforts to improving early literacy. Or if they don't start ready, we can also drop what we're doing and provide intensive literacy tutoring in grades K through 3. And if we can't fix it by then then we can shift and provide intense reading and math intervention in grades 3 through 8. And if we haven't fixed it by then, we can make sure every kid goes to school every day. Very solvable, right? And if we can't do that, we can make sure all the kids get better grades in high school. And if we can't do that, we can make sure we give free test prep to every kid. And if we can't do that, well, goodness, let's just give away lots of money in college scholarships. And that way nobody graduates with any debt. Unfortunately, we do not have a limited well of resources from which we can all draw in order to do this. We can't just magically increase the median household income of everybody in the bottom half of the state by 30%. Interestingly enough, as I was driving in here this morning, I was thinking about it, and that increase in median household income to take you from, say, the third quartile to the second quartile in median income is about what you would be paying for high-quality child care and preschool for your child.